This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We've got a culturing process, a fermenting process, an aging process. So the butter will taste very different than, I guess, the average supermarket butter. I like to say we make butter makers butter. Like, this is the sort of butter makers would like to eat, simply because of the slow process in which we ferment and age and get the flavour into it. You know, the natural fermentation that gets all the flavours into the cream, and then once you churn it, you end up with this really rich, flavoursome butter that evolves and changes because it's a live culture that's in the butter as well.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
This episode of the Luminaries on Deep in the Weeds is proudly supported by Deputy, rostering and timesheets without the usual chaos.
You've got to lead by example, and you have to be disciplined and, just learn to take control of your mind and put things that don't need to be at front of mind at that time on reserve for later, and take good notes and approach it later when that is the right time for those things.
This is the Luminaries on the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Over the last decade, there have been a throng of new operators creating the new wave of Australian cuisine, many steering the conversation in regards to food. But there have been some changing our perceptions of the dining experience too, while working out a business model that is also self-sustaining. Tristan Rosier is the chef and co-owner of Arthur Restaurant in Surrey Hills. Tristan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to have you on the show. You made an incredible impact from day dot, bringing Arthur to Surrey Hills with such a different progressive sort of offering. Did it feel like that's what you were doing at the time, or were you just doing something you believed in?
I think we were doing something that we believed in, I guess. We weren't really paying attention to, how we were perceived necessarily, more just like putting our head down, this is what we want to do, and, trying to do that as best we could. Potentially, there was something we could have learnt from maybe putting our head up a little bit more and sussing things out. But to be honest, like, you're just so busy, you kind of just use your instincts and try and become, I guess, what your idea is of what you want to be. But that is something that I've really learnt, that it takes quite a few years to really become what you want to do and how you want to do things. And it's definitely trial and error, and you have to listen to the market and your audience and your staff and sort of keep working it, I suppose.
Well, take us back to when the plans were first in action for Arthur and what that vision was and what it took to pull it together.
I mean, for me at the time, I was working at a small restaurant called Farmhouse, which I sort of worked at on and off for about probably 4 years. And I knew that model was working really well. So I knew, like, at a baseline, I could at least replicate that in some way. So that was definitely what really shaped, like, doing it on my own or on our own, and doing it in the similar format, which I really believed in, and just wanting to do our version of it, I suppose, and maybe doing a slightly bigger version of it because Farmhouse is quite small. But it did really take us quite a few years to get, everything in place. And I really know now that timing is everything, and things are delayed for a reason sometimes. You need to have all the right pieces of the puzzle at the ready to embark on something, and sign a lease and be committed to it. So while we were very impatient at the time, and it was just a huge amount of setbacks, I think it was what really got us in the right headspace to do it and to commit to doing it, and to be able to follow through with it.
Tell us about the location that you chose and why that really worked for your idea.
It's one of these things. We actually had, like, potentially 3 different locations in mind. It's funny because where we have actually ended up having Arthur is the first site that we actually looked at. It's right next to where we lived, like literally like we lived in the building next door to it, and we saw, and this will sum up why timing is everything. We saw that it was the people who were currently trading in there were trying to sell the business, and we looked at it, and the fit out needed a lot of work, and our budget was like minuscule, so it was not really possible for us to buy the business and then basically gut it and refit it out the way we wanted it. So and also we had been looking for something slightly smaller than what Arthur is, so I guess it was just ruled out at that point. We then looked at sites in Enmore and Paddington, which both ended up falling through for different reasons. I mean, we had paid deposits on sites and had to, almost go through litigation to get that money back because, of different deals falling through and things like that. And then, a year passed in that time, and, that business that was operating in the space of Arthur had actually just decided to close its doors, and no one ended up buying the business. And it was completely gutted. So, the circumstances in that 12 months changed from having to buy a business and then renovate it to this thing's been gutted. We can just move in and, do our renovation and open. So, timing really is everything.
Take us back to when you first got the keys and what it took and what it felt like building your own restaurant for the first time.
I mean, it was fairly nerve-wracking. I think getting the keys was a relief because at that point you've gone through, weeks, if not months of negotiating on leases and, just having to, at that point really learn what's involved in that process alone and getting advice and paying for advice, which is costly. So you don't basically end up in a position where you can't get out of things or, things ends up costing more than what you realize and, negotiating that lease and learning what all of those terms mean, like I'm a chef. So learning that stuff is an important step in becoming a business owner. So to get the keys was like actually a massive sigh of relief that we could just focus now on, renovating and getting open. And I think, reflecting on it was a daunting time for sure. As I said, we didn't have a huge amount of money at all. And, I would be, sitting down at the computer and just like dropping 20 grand, like paying off the credit card and going again, buying stuff. It's pretty daunting seeing that money going out. And then, fast forward a couple of months on opening nights and soft openings and things. I remember actually at the end of the night, I'd just been so busy on our first soft opening. And, I think we just charged, half price for the food and maybe half price for drinks on that night for family and friends. And the manager came over to me with a piece of paper that had the takings for the night. And I just had completely forgot that money would actually come in at some point, I was like, oh, wow, we made $3,000. Wow, that's amazing. I thought that was awesome. But actually, that was actually not a lot of money.
Arthur became the canvas for you to paint your picture as a chef and tell your story. Tell us about the creation of the menu. The construct of it was quite different to what restaurants were offering at the time, and how it allowed you to express your cooking as well.
Yeah, I think it's very different now. I think we've sort of, COVID has molded us into what we are now a little bit. And I think now Arthur is more who we've always wanted to be. I think in the beginning there were a lot of factors which sort of shaped, what price point we entered the market and how we definitely wanted to eat. We wanted to be more of a casual venue. We wanted to offer a set menu, but it was shared. It would almost be like if you go to a restaurant with a few friends and sort of, just trust the waiter to order for you. We wanted it to be that kind of a vibe. And, doing a set menu really allows us to sort of create a menu that flows really well and, things can go in a progressive way. Working in a la carte restaurants in the past, sometimes you would have people just order the weirdest combination of either dishes and drinks. And you just thought like, that is just going to go so bad. Like a piece of like fish with like a cheese board and an espresso martini at the same time. So in a way, a lot of it was about us taking a bit of control back. And, you know, we sort of just put our head down and thought, this is what we want to do. And I think like we were pretty uncompromising on that. But it did allow us to, you know, give people a good range of different dishes and different things to try, and have some dishes that were more safe, but other dishes that sort of push people's sort of, you know, palates a little bit and challenge them definitely. And I think, you know, I think our menu was like $70 when we opened for that 5-course meal. So I think it represented really good value, and it placed us in an interesting place in the market, definitely.
What was the interaction with customers like in those early days? Did you have any problems with no-shows and perceptions of value, even though $70 is incredible value for 5 courses?
Yeah, I think it's all market-based. I think at those prices, you're tapping into a certain market who expect like a larger portion, and we certainly did. I think our portions are definitely like, I would say, per dish smaller, but we offer more dishes now. So back then, I think, you know, I remember one day someone, you know, said that the portions were so ridiculously small, and he couldn't believe that, you know, we were charging $70 for them. And I just couldn't believe it. You know, if you work it out, it's just like, you know, it's such little money per actual dish, per portion that we're charging people. You know, it could be like $7, you know, per course, per person, that we're charging them, which is just ridiculously cheap. If you had to order all of those dishes on an a la carte menu, they might be, you know, 20 to 25% more expensive. So, you know, our efficiencies that we're built by offering only a set menu, we reduce our wastage and reduce our staff costs. That's where what's what allows us to sort of charge the $70 and still make a profitable business. So I think to hear feedback of like, oh, their portions are a little bit small or whatever, I thought it was just a bit of a kick in the teeth, to be honest. But, you know, and we were definitely, you know, from day one took credit cards and, you know, charged no shows and those kinds of things. We were always, you know, pretty fair about it and sort of approached every sort of scenario as its own thing. And, you know, if it was like a table of 6 dropping to a 5 on the night, you know, we would probably charge them, but we would also give them the food for the 6th person, for example. So, you know, I think it's fair, it's give and take. You know, definitely we pissed off some people for sure. But I think, you know, you got to work for the majority, and a lot of people understand that a small business this size, you know, charging relatively fair pricing, I think, you know, they get it most of the time.
Did that decision have a positive impact on people booking and also financially for you?
Yeah, I think, you know, I know Surrey Hills is quite accessible, particularly now with the tram and things like that. But, you know, we are not that far away from the city, and, you know, there's definitely like lots of people around the area. But I think, you know, we're always going to be a destination venue. You know, we're not in a strip of shops or a strip of restaurants like, say, for like Potts Point or Paddington or something like that. So Arthur was always going to be a destination for us. Foot traffic was never, you know, at the forefront of our thinking. You know, we just thought, and even at the time, I think the tram was being worked on. So this end of Surrey Hills was just an absolute nightmare. So we knew that people were going to be booking to come. It was going to be a planned night out. So really, we've always been a kind of bookings only restaurant. I think we've probably only done maybe, honestly, like 20 tables of walk-ins ever, you know? Yeah, it's really, really low. So, if, you know, it lends itself in that sense as well to taking the credit card details and making people honor that booking, because the chance of us actually refilling that seat if you no-show is really, really low. And it's also nature of a set menu restaurant. Even if people do come in, they're like, oh, this place looks cute, we'll go in for a bite to eat, and they realize that they only do a set menu, you know, that's very unlikely that's going to convert to them sitting down. You know, people, if they're going to spend, you know, upwards of $100, I think that's a bit more of a planned experience.
I want to get into your cooking and what you're doing at Arthur these days, but take us back to when you were young. What was the lure to bring you into hospitality?
I think, like, to go all the way back, I mean, I started when I was around 14 years old, and I started as a kitchen hand in a cafe in Cronulla. I was going quite poorly at school, and you know, it just wasn't for me. I just found myself staring out the window most of the time, like wishing I was somewhere else. So, that was met with a fair bit of negativity. I wasn't doing particularly well with grades and thing, and you're always failing. So my parents sort of said, you're going to have to get a job. And to be honest, I always wanted to just earn a bit of money and that kind of thing. So part-time work was something that was always on the cards. So, I got a job in this cafe where my grandmother actually knew the owner, or the owner's parents, funnily enough. And I got the job as a kitchen hand. I'd work on the weekends. I actually got out of school sport for the last year of high school so that I could go and work both days on the weekend in the cafe. And, it seems like quite a mundane task just doing dishes, but, in a fast-paced cafe in this tiny little pot wash area, like you have to hustle, like from the moment you walk in. And I don't know, there was just something about that kind of buzz that was a bit fun and exciting. And, you're doing dishes. It's not like, it's not that amazing of a job, but, people need you, and now I realize that actually, the kitchen hand is one of the most important roles in the kitchen, and people actually really want you there and to perform, and they need you. So, that led into, you're killing it at the dishes, you're doing a good job. Well, okay, you cut this bread, cut these tomatoes, and then now they become your responsibilities. And then, after a few months, then, they hire another kitchen hand and you start doing more, cooking prep jobs and all that sort of stuff. So, it was just a positivity and being a part of something, albeit just a small cafe. Like at the age of 14, that's like huge, and getting the financial reward of it every day, that was pretty satisfying, I suppose, getting like $2.50 in cash tips a day and like, save it up for a week and then go buy some phone credit or something. I don't know. That's for me at that time, that was just super rewarding.
Take us into the commercial kitchen when you started working in, you've worked in some of the best restaurants in Sydney. What was it like in those early days and what did you take out of it?
I think like when I sort of first got into like more fine dining, or I think the first real like dining restaurant I worked in was Est, and I was already a qualified chef at that time, and I think I was 22 years old or something like that, and I thought I was fairly well experienced. I've been probably cooking a good amount of years, and I'd had a fair few good experiences and sort of done a bit of management and cooked it at a really good level. Going into a restaurant like that, you're back to square one. You realize that what you knew is just a drop in the ocean of what there is to know, and the standards are so high, and you've got to just like sink or swim, and it's really that environment. And to be honest, I found it quite difficult to adjust to that. It was just definitely very eye-opening. And, I probably threw up every day for the first 2 weeks on the way to work with nerves. But you just got to like stick it out and believe in what they're doing. And, they're there at the top for a reason. At the time, it was like one of the only three out restaurants in New South Wales, and, just an institution. And there was a lot of great chefs there, obviously working really hard. There's a lot to learn. You've just got to get past that initial stage. And then once you're accepted in there, you're part of the team, and there's just a lot to be gained, I think.
What did you learn from working in those restaurants from a business sense that became useful when you opened your own venue?
Look, I think there's definitely things in my career that I categorize as things to learn and things to like learn not what to do, and like at that time in a restaurant like Est, it was all about like customer focus and like timings and being ready for service and things like that, but almost to the detriment of things like food costs and things like that. You just have to be ready, and definitely things like sustainability wasn't really at front of mind, So I suppose reflecting on it, I look at it and think, fuck, how do we do things that way? It just seemed a little crazy, but it's just the way that things had always been done. I think, certainly in the last, 5-10 years, things have changed a lot in that sense. Everyone's got sustainability at their front of mind. And, I think, the many hats that chefs wear now is just growing and growing. The expectation is higher and higher on, a chef or a business owner and how they operate. It's looking back at those experiences and, trying to take that as your baseline and then, manipulate things from that point and be like, okay, this is how we used to do things. Was that necessarily the best way? Can we, rethink that into the future?
This episode of the Luminaries on Deep in the Weeds is proudly supported by Deputy, helping managers and staff do their best work.
At Deputy, we're on a mission. We're on a mission to simplify shift work for every cafe, every restaurant, every bar, every business owner, every dishy, every waiter, every cook, every sous chef. This is the industry that will thrive with Deputy.
For more information, go to deputy.com. Well, how do you manage your creative side of things, of being the chef, as well as running your own business?
It's definitely challenging, and it's not only challenging for because those two things lean on each other so much. It's challenging to get yourself into the different mindsets you need to be in to work on those areas of the business. You can't always just turn on creativity. It just, for me, I find it's a really weird thing, but I get really creative in the middle of service. When the restaurant is churning, we're fully booked and we're, we've got all of plate up happening and we're calling orders and running food and cooking and things, something about that all happening and it just, your brain is really active at that point, just gets my creative juices flowing. So often I am mid-service talking to chefs about ideas for the menu or, completely left field ideas, and I have a notepad and pen next to me so I jot stuff down so I don't forget it because, things are moving a million miles an hour. You can tend to forget things. That's not always an ideal time for that. And to try and get back into that headspace, sometimes you have to draw on those notes you've taken and try and get back in the space to be creative. But then on the flip side, you've got the business side of things where, it's meetings with managers and cost meetings and talking about profits and trying to, work out costs for drinks and staff costs and forecasting and stuff. It's equally as satisfying, but for different reasons, But, there's times as well where you schedule these meetings and you arrive for them and you just think, I'd rather not be here. I'd just rather be doing something else. So it's hard. And, maybe when you're working for other people, you've got other people who are setting the expectation. But when you've got to set that expectation and keep that standard for yourself, it's also hard because you have the power to just choose to delay that meeting if you want to. You know what I mean? So you've got to lead by example and you have to be disciplined and, just learn to take control of your mind and put things that don't need to be at front of mind at that time on reserve for later and take good notes and approach it later when that is the right time for those things.
You mentioned how different hospitality is these days and how many things have changed. Technology plays an important role in most businesses. What role does it play in hospitality these days?
I mean, it's definitely something we use a lot. I think gone are the days of the reservations book. That's all online, and, something that a lot, we're hiring managers and things like that. You need to make sure that these people have the skills in these areas. Everything's just digital, it's something you need to know what you're doing because you can really stuff things up if you're not pulling on the right strings, not optimizing your seating floor plan. You can, if you've got something wrong in the back end, you could be turning away bookings without even knowing it, and I've heard of that happening to restaurants, they're down on revenue and can't work out why. Someone goes through the back end and for like 3 months, they've had half of the dining room, like, only being able to take bookings between an hour window or something like that. So, these things can happen. Technology is definitely a positive thing. We, for example, have like, instead of a notebook for all of your recipes, we have it on like some sort of an app, and you can update the recipes, and then every chef who has it in there on their phone, if you update it to the cloud, of course, then the recipe updates in their phone, so that, if you thought something was a bit too acidic, you can just drop the lemon juice by 10%. And then now everyone is just making the new recipe, and you didn't even have to tell anyone. So there's definite benefits like that. You just got to know how to use it and take advantage of those things.
You've been described as part of the new wave of Australian chefs and cuisine. How do you see this new wave emerging, and what does it feel like to be described as part of it?
I mean, it's pretty great to be part of that. I think that, that's the goal. We want to be trying to, I think the end goal is trying to define what an Australian cuisine is. And it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I mean, for us, we use exclusively Australian ingredients, except for maybe a bit of fish out of New Zealand or something. But that's just based on availability or quality. But, some people have even said, like, I've had someone write a review on our business saying, like, we came here expecting modern Australian food, but there was no punchy Asian flavors. And it's like, well, we don't really do that, but I can see how that could be considered a modern Australian cuisine as well, right? So it's a hard thing to define. For us, the use of native ingredients is important, but I think it has to be done in a really respectful and tasteful way. Use it to highlight dishes and not like just put it there for the sake of it, just because it looks cool on a menu to write certain things. I think you just got to be responsible with it, and, just try and, just develop what your idea is of that cuisine. But it's definitely, an honor to be considered, a part of that movement. And, I think there's a clear direction that we're going, and, we just want to, continually day by day, just keep moving towards that kind of goal and improving, and, collaborating. I really like our team to collaborate on ideas, and, I want different techniques coming in to try and bring the best out of the produce. So, working as a team and having that at front of mind, I think, it's definitely going in the right direction.
You're right. It's hard to describe Australian cuisine because it's influenced by so many global techniques and ingredients and influences. But give us an idea of what your food is like. And do you have a dish or two you can tell us about that sort of epitomizes where you're coming from as a chef?
Oh, that's a good question. If I just flick a few pages of my book here, it's like we've just been working on the kind of menu for reopening after this COVID lockdown, and we've probably gone through about 2 seasons by now. I mean, so, it means not just changing dishes, it's changing, a whole menu. I think, like, what we like to do is just try and bring the best out of an ingredient. So maybe we'll pick like a hero ingredient and then try and balance that with different textures and other ingredients that just bring out the best of it. It's harder to explain than you think, but it's not so difficult of a thing to do. You just need to find what's the best in season at the time and local to us, and then basically prepare that in a way that makes it shine, brings the best out of it, using different techniques. Like, I won't limit the technique from abroad, but just making sure that it's, applied in a way to bring the best out of the ingredient. And then, whatever that hero ingredient is for the dish, we just want to support that with other things that are going to bring out the best of it. Like at the moment, we're looking at doing like a lobster dish, which lobster will feature on our set menu for the first time, actually, as not an addition. So we're excited about that. And, that's things you can do with new price points and things. So, we're going to do lobster. We're going to do it with like a carrot sauce, and we're going to put a little bit of ginger and nasturtium with that. And, just to the sweetness of the carrot with the warmth of the ginger, the shellfish sort of sauce with the shells of the lobster, the sweetness of the lobster meat. And we'll grill the lobster over charcoal to get that nice smokiness through it. And then, a bit of the spice of like the nasturtium as well, and that pepperiness. I think it's just using those different flavors and different ways to achieve different ways of seasoning, like that hero lobster, using maybe ginger instead of pepper, and like nasturtium instead of pepper, or things like that, like the nasturtium sort of caper in a way, but we might pickle them, so it adds another dimension to it. It's just using those different techniques on different elements to like not only bring out the best of the elements, but bring out the best of the hero dish as well, and add texture and all of that along the way.
You mentioned at the top of the show that it takes a couple of years to find out or become what you want to be, or what you envisaged Arthur to be. Tell us about how much it's changed and what it's going to be like to dine at Arthur when you open the doors again after the lockdown.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I really do believe it takes a few years to sort of become what you ultimately want to be. And, when we first opened, I had an idea of what we wanted, and, we used to seat like 40 people, for example, and now like COVID in a way has shaped that we can't do that anymore. We need to have more space between tables. Whereas when we opened, we literally had 10 centimeters between tables because we really wanted a more like, Paris type bistro vibe, where people are close together, and it was a community space where, you chat to the table next to you. And of course, that can't really happen anymore. So we've had to find a way to, still make the same money while serving less people. So of course you have to put the price up, but you can't just do that. You need to, give more for that money. So, we've gone from a shared menu now to more of a degustation style menu where everyone gets their own plate for every course. We do have like more snacky items at the top of the menu where we sort of, they're more shared. But essentially, there's a 6-course menu now instead of 5. We've actually increased the amount of chefs we have working from 3 in the beginning. Now I think there's like 7 of us. We've got an extra kitchen now. We put a pastry kitchen in, so we have a full-time pastry chef. We have more floor staff. We used to do 40 covers with 3. We've added a whole nother person to do 26 per sitting now. So, I think like what you are in the beginning, and your ideas of what you want your restaurant to be, they evolve, and different factors externally or internally will change that. COVID was a big one, but not the only thing. And when we reopened after the first lockdown, we had to put the prices up. And, we changed our food style. We changed the way we serve things. And, that new price point, it allowed us room in the food cost to use ingredients we'd never used before. So, like, as I said, lobster will feature this time after lockdown for the first time. And it's, something we've always wanted to use, but it's been out of reach in that price point. So I think, the customers have come along for the journey. I have regulars who have been here since day one, and every time they come, it's different, it's better. And, you just, if you have the goal of getting better every day, things change, and, people can see that, and, they absorb that. I think it's going in a good place, but I think where we are now is kind of what I always wanted to really open, but maybe didn't have the balls to do in the beginning. Kind of unknown when we opened, not much reputation. $70 is very comfortable because people will just come because of the price point. Whereas, to charge over $100 a head for a set menu, I think, you've got to have some sort of notoriety and, and confidence to serve the things that, people are going to expect at that price point. but that comes with time. That comes with having systems and people and the labor force to be able to produce the food people are expecting for that price. So, you by just being in business for that amount of time as well, you just have your way of doing things through trial and error. It's the Arthur way of doing this. You start to build up a collection of recipes and, not even like, recipes for a complete dish, but like base recipes of sauces and seasonings and dressings and things like that, and stocks and the way we do things here, which makes us uniquely us, and make it taste uniquely Arthur. So it does take time to develop that. And, we're not at the end of that yet, but it goes hand in hand with, that new Australian food movement, I guess. It's just like you're on this journey. It's what's so appealing about hospitality. It's just this real deep hole of learning. It just doesn't end.
Well, what's exciting you about the next couple of years in a hospitality sense?
I don't know. A lot's changing. Hey, not like even just looking at staff, like the knowledge that even like young staff have these days, young chefs have, is just incredible compared to what I had at their age. It's like even the way they live their lives is different. For example, 10, 15 years ago, everyone would just go out drinking all the time till like 4 o'clock in the morning and partying and all that sort of stuff. Like all of my chefs just like exercise, like do yoga and like go for runs in the morning before work and like read books and like go to bed early. And it's just like a completely different thing. I think the more of a professional environment, us as business owners make it, the more serious these young chefs are taking things. And I don't know, through like social media and, being able to share content so easily globally, like the knowledge and the wealth of knowledge in these young chefs is amazing. I think it's super exciting for like the next generation to see what they do, and to be in a position now where I can give these younger chefs these opportunities to like get into more senior roles and really contribute to the menu and see their ideas. It's like definitely rewarding, and, they don't always get it right, but with guidance and mentorship, you can really like sort of show them and tweak their ideas and try and bring that out of them. I think it's like super exciting.
What is it that you love about what you do?
It's challenging. It's kind of challenging. Someone like me, I'm always hungry for more. I'm always hungry to do more things or to learn more or to, solve more complex things. I think there's not much more like complex than running a restaurant. There's so many things you have to be good at. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at any of them, but like, I'm not even saying I'm the best chef. I think there's like way better chefs out there, but I think like it's just so deep of a whole, like, just on the creative side of food, there's just so many possibilities and like different ways of doing things. And like, even to look back at techniques we did 2 years ago, it's like, wow, that was pretty crap compared to what we do now. It's just like constant development. And there's just always more to know. And then there's always a new way of looking at things. Like, I think a really good example of that is like, you just got to look at Josh Nyland, right? He's taken like how people looked at filleting fish and storing fish and completely changed it globally. People's way of thinking of it is completely different. So it just goes to show you every so often there's chefs like that who come out and do something so groundbreaking that everyone thinks, oh my God, how come we've just been doing it this way and never considered a different way? So, it's exciting because there's people breaking free of tradition and finding better solutions to problems. I think it's super exciting.
Well, given your success over the next couple of years, do you have anything in the works or planned for the future with Arthur or beyond it?
Yeah, like I think everything at Arthur is just becoming more and more focused on trying to give customers a better experience. So everything we do really is just around trying to make what we do more seamless to make that end product better. Be it we put the pastry kitchen in, so now we can do better desserts more efficiently, or even simple little things like adding more coat hooks in the dining room. So every table has a coat hook to put their coat on and no one's coat gets mixed up. It's all these little things that seem like nothing, but add up to an ultimate experience. For Arthur itself, like I just see us continually moving in that direction with the food, with the service, with the wine, with, everything we offer. I must have moved layouts of things and put new cupboards in different places and bought new glasses and bought new things and new cutlery and new plates so many times now I can't even count. But it's just always trying to find a better way of doing things. So I think we'll just be continuing to sort of do that, really, try and find new ways to make the product better. If it's saving up to buy a new oven to cook better bread, well then, that is on the cards down the line, we just want it to be the best version of what it is. And I think there's no real shame in that in any sense with businesses. If you're like a cafe or a small wine bar or whatever, you don't need to aspire to be, the top 3 hat fine dining restaurant or whatever. You just need to, try and be the best version of what you are that you want to be, and can be. So for Arthur, that's definitely the trajectory. We definitely will open other venues. We'd love to open something a little bit more casual than Arthur, because it's definitely becoming more of a dining venue, and we love that about it. But where Arthur was very casual in the beginning, we'd love to have something at that end of it as well. And I think the sustainability aspect of that is really interesting, being able to have something that's more of an a la carte sort of restaurant in unison with Arthur, where we can use different cuts in, we could get a fish and use the collars in the bar and then use the fillets in the Arthur's restaurant. So, it's definitely crossover between venues and things like that. It's exciting. And, Arthur, just, in the nature of being a set menu, where everyone gets an individual plate now, you want portioning to be identical between people, but that usually means wastage, and we don't want that to happen. So having another space where we could do, use those other pieces on the menu, that change really often, I think that's definitely positive.
Well, Tristan, it's an absolute honour to have you on at the Luminaries on Deep in the Weeds today to hear just a bit of your story. I know that there's going to be so much more to it. Please keep in touch, and we'll talk again soon.
Will do. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.